Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey health junkies, on this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Nickolas Fransen, and we are going to be talking about therapy in a bottle. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean alcohol. It means looking into the possibilities of homeopathy for helping to speed up the discovery of what's holding you back. Because one of the big complaints that I get from a lot of folks is, man, I just can't figure out what's holding me back. I can't get to those memories. The hypnosis isn't working. The meditation isn't working. I don't know how to get there. Is there something that can help me move through these mental, emotional blocks? And Nickolas is bringing things from Switzerland, and it's very fascinating. A lot of people think of homeopathy as being kind of like another woo-woo potion that maybe it doesn't work. And maybe you've tried different homeopathic remedies like Bach flower remedies, or maybe some of the Boyrin or Highlands remedies, and maybe you've seen mixed results. But the interesting thing that I find about Privianaturals is that they're working on an energetic level with the homeopathy, and it's something that could be going alongside of working on your overall total health, but also it can go so deep that it can go after some of those physical symptoms that you've been to every darn doctor for and no one can figure out. I find it fascinating. The longer I've been in this game, you've probably heard me say this over and over again, that I do think that there is something to this energetic business. And if the homeopathics can be created specifically to unblock subconscious psychosocial emotional stuff that's creating physical symptoms, by all means, let's do this. And if it's blocking how your ability is to move forward in life, and you've spent all the money on different places, if this is something that can help you, dang it, might be worth looking into. Now, Nickolas has a fabulous story about his son. Definitely want to hear that, and I follow up on it at the end of the podcast, so you gotta listen to the end to get the whole story. But fabulous podcast, super interesting stuff. I'm trying out the Privianaturals products on myself right now, and I'm in the process. It takes about a year, and so far so good. I've uncovered some very interesting things. You'll hear about that in subsequent podcasts. So let's introduce you to Nickolas Fransen. Hey there, health junkies. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. I'm excited today because I have Nickolas Fransen on, and we are going to be talking about trauma, psychosomatic illnesses, lots of subconscious blocks, and things that I see in my practice all the time. And really, it's taken me a while, but I'm really realizing how much these sorts of things are really big roadblocks in our ability to heal. So, Nick, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Jannine, I am super excited to be here, and I'm ready to talk about all sorts of interesting and intriguing things.
Well, one of the first things I like to always ask folks, because it's come as a journey for me to really realize that we can create a lot of our own illness. And I don't want people to think about it as being like it's a bad thing that we're hypochondriacs, but I used to think as a doc, like, oh, I'm a doc and I fix things. But now I've realized, no, wait, it's a partnership. It's not a me fixing. It's a partnership. So how did you come to this industry? How did you realize that, wow, all these psychosomatic things really have a connection to thoughts, subconscious blocks, all those things?
Yeah, that's great. So I actually started out my career in the pharmaceutical industry, and was doing some sales for, I won't say the name of a particular pharmaceutical company. And I was doing pretty well. I had a son who at 2 got 1 vaccination. Within a couple of weeks, he had lost all eye contact. He wouldn't answer to his name, and he just disappeared. He was later diagnosed with autism. And we went to the pediatrician at the time, and the pediatrician told my wife at that time, look, he's going to be violent. He's never going to walk. He's never going to talk. And you're going to have to put him in an institution. Here's some antidepressants for you and some for him.
Whoa.
So that was kind of the start of my journey into sort of the natural realm. At that point, I began at that point transitioning into a a company that I began to work with out of Canada, and they were using some unique homeopathic remedies that had come out of Switzerland. They were designed to treat subconscious patterns of thinking, like really deep programmed sort of things we learn as a kid, like the world is supposed to run like this. And if you don't fit in this particular way, you won't fit into the world. Or your body needs to look this way. And if it doesn't look this way, it's not okay. So there's lots of these little program things, right?
Mm.
And these particular remedies, they were designed to treat some of these old subconscious blocks and trauma related injuries, because that really causes deep subconscious programming as well. And so they began at that time to sort of test me and with these remedies, and I had some great experiences. We can go into that in a little bit, but that was sort of the beginnings of me understanding how trauma, certain learned behaviors, even inherited behaviors, can really program our minds in a way that's not in our best interest.
Oh my goodness. The programming is deep. I've realized the deep in this one here. My goodness, I look back and realize that a lot of the things that we don't, and this is something that I found with a lot of patients, we don't realize like how much we like sponge off of our family, off of our even our friends and who we spend the most time with, and how much of an impact that really does have on us. So that's fascinating that there's a connection with programming and homeopathy, because I have not heard this before. And that's why when I was asked about having you on the podcast, I was like, well, here's a twist I haven't had before, and I'm excited to learn from you. So tell us more about your experiments that you had with the different homeopathics and programming, how it related to, and what kind of experiences you had.
Well, I was first tested, and we use a kinesiology based test. We use what's called an arm length reflex test. It's more of a kind of a German sort of thing. And there's 28 remedies in the product line, and they designed to treat different emotional conditions. And we can talk about how these all evolved in a minute. They tested me for, they call it MVita number 8, which was isolation.
Hmm.
Now, Jannine, I grew up on a potato farm in Idaho. I had a great family life. I didn't have any other problems really, besides, wrecking a motorcycle and, stealing stop signs and a few different things like that, as you do kind of out in a rural area. Cause you're challenged with keeping yourself busy.
Uh-huh.
I did not have anything that I could relate to the word when they said isolation, but I thought, okay, well, I'll try this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So within the first 2 weeks, I had a dream. Now, one of the biggest side effects of these remedies, Jannine, is vivid dreaming. Okay. So they said, watch for the dreams. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I had an old memory. And this was almost as if it was a replay. And I saw myself, I couldn't have been, 8, 9, 10. I saw myself going outside, walking over to the baseball diamond to go play with a couple of my friends, and they started making fun of me. And I saw myself turn around and then go over and play on the monkey bars with someone else. I woke up and I was like, I don't think I've thought of that incident since it had actually happened. And so this was just the beginnings of sort of uprooting some old trauma, some old behavioral patterns or old thinking patterns that were deep inside. And that's why, people say, well, what about meditation? And what about, dream boards and imagining and visioning? These are all great things. But to those people, I say, bring what you have and let's see if we can't add more. Let's see if we can't take you deeper to where you want to be. We're talking not just people that have had trauma related, but high achievers that are like, I'm not happy with where I am. I know something's blocking me from getting where I want to be. Often it's something very deep subconsciously, and we can tap into that with these specific remedies.
That's fascinating. It's almost like hitting like the speed up button, because I'm going through the process myself, and I'll be honest, I'm still in the process of a lot of unwiring and trying to really get to what you're talking about, seeing where this, in your case, isolation. For me, there's other things of like abandonment, you know, pleasing,
Absolutely.
people pleasing, things of that nature. I'm going, we go back. I tried to do the hypnosis stuff. I cannot figure out where it came from. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that loop where they're like, all right, I'm doing the work, but I want to know where it came from. I mean, at least in my opinion, I would kind of want to know. Some people say it doesn't matter, but I think if you can get back to that, it can give you a little bit of perspective to move forward.
So when we look at how are these subconscious blocks formed, let's look at that first of all
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's really three main ways. Trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We know that when one goes through trauma, there is a forced altercation in brain chemistry. You get a manipulation of neurotransmitters and hormones that can permanently put the brain into a cycle of thinking that can be negative. You've heard the term neurons that fire together, wire together, right? That's how we create habits, good and bad. Patterns of thinking are no different. They are no different. So the first way we get these subconscious blocks is we can go through trauma, and it doesn't have to be a rape or a sexualization. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be the breakup of a marriage, like a divorce. It could be problems between mom and daughter. It could be a lot of different things. And it can be varying. Like one person, it could be real extreme. And the other person, it could be not extreme, but it will cause the same sort of thing because everyone's got kind of a different threshold of, where they sort of lie. So that's the first one is trauma. The second one, learned behavior. All right. This is really important because beliefs that are taught to us when we're young or in our teens or even as an adult, we have the ability to accept them or reject them. Okay. Let me give you an example. There was a individual that I treated for a little while, had an eating disorder for about a decade. It was pretty lot of bulimia, anorexia, pretty extreme, lots of cavities in the mouth. I mean, suffered a lot from this. And in this case, she could pinpoint the exact time it started. She says she was on a track team. She was getting ready for a track meet, stepped on a scale, and the coach said, "Oh, you're 2 pounds overweight." Now, she could have said, "Oh, you're crazy, coach, get out of here," or whatever. But in her, it was like a light switch. Oh, I'm 2 pounds overweight. How am I going to get 2 pounds off? And then this spiraled into behaviors that created a lot of binge eating and anorexia and body image issues. So, this is a learned behavior that if we accept and believe and take it as our own, it becomes a subconscious program.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got trauma, we've got learned behavior, and then we have inherited. So we love our parents,
Oh, goodness.
but we get good things from them, which we are grateful for, but we also inherit some of their tendencies, right? So let me give you an example. A study done by Rachel Yehuda in the New York area who tested with Holocaust survivors.
Oh, wow.
She found that the children of Holocaust survivors had a higher incidence of PTSD and anxiety than did other Jewish counterparts, parents whose children did not go through the Holocaust. So this proves that we have the ability to pass on to our ancestors certain learned behaviors and tendencies. So those are kind of the three main ways that we can create some of these subconscious programs.
Oh, I mean, they all make sense. And when you really like anyone who's listening right now could probably resonate with one story or the other or all of them for that matter, which makes up this very interesting soup of why we do what we do, but also the ailments that we tend to have. So I want to know, going back to the isolation remedy, what ended up happening with you with that one and what happened next?
Well, you're really getting deep on this here, Jannine. Um, so I went through the isolation remedy. The one thing that I want people to understand is this therapy is not it's not quick. Okay, we want people to go on to our remedies for about a year to a year and a half. The therapists that use our remedies, they'll say, "Nick, we can make 6 months of progress that normally would have taken us 3 years." when we're doing talk therapy and we're doing the Ruby Med remedies at the same time. So I went through the isolation thing. That particular remedy was about 3 months worth. About 9 months, Jannine, some really strange things started to happen. Like I said, I grew up in a religious home, good background, good everything, right? And it had served me well until I was about 35 when I was taking these remedies. And I felt great about my religion, who I was. Never would I have questioned how I was raised or what I had learned since then. And there was this meeting that would happen every Saturday morning, and I would go to this meeting just regularly. It's just something that I did. It's fairly early in the morning. I got up one morning to go to this meeting. I got in the car, and it was like a voice that spoke to me, and it said, "What in the hell are you doing?" And this kind of shocked me because I I had never ever questioned that what I was doing had a right or a wrong, or it had a other purpose than what I felt was good. I turned off the car, went back inside, went back to bed. And then over the next few years, really, started by this little catalyst, I began to sort of break down some of my religious ideas. That and my religion is still my faith is still very important to me, but it's much different than it was before. It's not quite full of the rules and the regulations and the do's and the don'ts. It changed me at such a core level that it was probably one of the most life defining moments that I've had, all caused at about 8 or 9 months by these particular remedies.
Interesting, interesting. Now, of course, I mean, folks know that this wasn't magic, this has to happen over time. But some folks do think when they think of homeopathy and working in that realm, they do think of it as being kind of magic, or they kind of think of it as like, what is this really? So I would love for you to kind of explain to folks your version of how you interpret homeopathy, because I've said it before, but I like how other folks say it too. I like to hear
Yeah.
different ways.
So this is fun. We can get into a little bit of the science for those that kind of like to understand it. Homeopathy came in around about 1798 by a man by the name of Samuel Hahnemann, who was actually a medical doctor and a professor at the medical school in Germany. And he began to discover that he could have a significant healing response with dilutions of herbs, different tissues, different flowers, plants, whatever it might be. So what he would do is he would do experiments on his students. So let's say, for instance, wherever you are, you reach out in your garden, you pull out a particular herb. We're going to stick that in a bottle of water and we're going to let it sit for a couple of weeks. Okay. We call this the mother tincture. Then we're going to go and we're going to take one drop out of that, and then we're going to put it in a clean bottle of water. Then we'll take one drop out of that, put it in another clean bottle of water. 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, 10x. That's why you see some of these different dilutions. We're essentially diluting the mother tincture. And what begins to happen is it creates an electromagnetic signature to the liquid. And that's how it really works. And this has been proven by in the 1980s by a man by the name of Jacques Benveniste, where his data was published in Nature, and it caused a huge uproar. He was, discredited, but these experiments have been reproduced hundreds of times, where he could show he took basophils, right? And basophils are an immune cell. He could degranulate them, which causes basal cells to degranulate, release things, cause an immune response, essentially, with diluted versions of various substances. So this helps us now understand that the body just doesn't work through a hormone that locks onto a receptor, tells a cell what to do. There's other ways of that it actually works. And these dilutions create an electromagnetic signature. This has all been proven now. And that is what communicates with the cells or the body to heal or to do different things.
That's an excellent, probably the best explanation I've heard of it. Plus the background with Samuel Hahnemann being the like father of all of this, or grandfather, however folks want to look at it. I, for a long time, I would look at these dilutions, right, and I would be like, okay, how can something very small have such an impact? And you had mentioned with the mast cells. So basophils, guys, basophils are white blood cells. Mast cells are what create histamine reactions. Our body signals histamine as it's a signal molecule, which is cool because histamine, we think of it as being bad. Like everyone's like, oh, I got it, I'm inflamed, I have a bug bite, but actually histamine has a good side. So I want you guys to think about that in a positive light. So with the different homeopathics, let's fast forward to now working with your therapy in a bottle here,
Yeah.
and talk about how the different remedies that you guys are using, what are they? Give us a kind of breakdown of different ones, different kind of scenarios, and give us like kind of the scoop, and
Yeah.
then we go from there.
So the method was created in Germany about 20 years ago. Now it's been there for quite some time. It's a very well-known therapy. There's 8 books written about it. We've got about 300 articles. We even have 11 clinical studies. So this
Cool.
is not just, this is pie in the sky, fun for stuff to talk about. There's actual really real data that the German and the Swiss company have done for this. It began with a doctor by the name of Reimar Bannis, Dr. Bannis. And he was in Germany and he was treating a lot of women with mental emotional sort of issues. And he was using Bach flower remedies. Now, we can find Bach flower remedies at just about any natural grocery store, and they're wonderful. They're homeopathic version of flowers. They're diluted versions of flowers. Okay. You're not getting the actual flower, you're getting the electromagnetic signatures associated with that flower that can create feelings of calm, feelings of energy, whatever it might be. He said, I got phenomenal results with these, but it seemed like 2 or 3 months later, the results were short lived. The patients would be back and I would change up the little remedies, give them more. They'd be happy for a while, but then they always seemed to come back. And it seemed like there was deeper issues that I wasn't able to reach.
Mm-hmm.
So he began a method where he started combining various homeopathic ingredients, and he came up with 28 formulas. So, number 8 was isolation, right? You've got other ones where suppressed feelings. We have other ones dealing with abandonment, need to be loved, show of strength, where we're tough on the outside, but inside we're just craving for good feelings. So he came up with 28 of these remedies, which he spent several years trying to, through trial and error. And then he started using them. Huge response, so much so that he got onto a program that was equivalent to Oprah in Germany, and it just kind of went wild. And so from there, it went spread all throughout Europe. And then it was actually in the US about 10 years ago. And then the FDA actually pulled it and wouldn't let it come in. So a few years ago, Dr. Bannis and I got together and he says, we need to get this into America again. And so we found a manufacturer here in the United States, amazing homeopathic manufacturer, FDA approved facility. They could actually make pharmaceuticals in their facility, but they don't. They've chosen to do just homeopathics. And now we've brought the method back to the United States, and that's kind of a little history of how it works.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, in terms of FDA, of course, because if something works, they want it, or they block it. Just telling you guys that's how it is. And Nick didn't say it, I said it. But point here is when something works, we know we know if the FDA doesn't want it, they want it for themselves. But let's talk a little bit about the brand as a whole. Like, how do folks get in touch with your brand to find it? Because I will be honest, I was trying to find things and I was not having luck. So you got to give me the scoop on what did I miss in my sleuthing.
You should be able to type in the therapy line is called RubyMed, RubiMed. So the spelling might throw you off a little bit. It's also been known as psychosomatic energetics.
Okay.
Is another form that you would find. But you can go to my site at Privianaturals. That's www.privianaturals.com. And that's designed, we're looking for 2 people. We're looking for practitioners who say, this sounds amazing. I know my patients could need it, could use it, and I'd really like to use it. We want those sort of practitioners. And then for patients, they're like, I need help. this is something I want to try. You can go there. There's a big button that says, tell us your story. You can book up an appointment, and we can chat with you and find a course of therapy. Like I said, it's about a year long. It's not terribly expensive. We're not like going to a $10,000 seminar or a $5,000 seminar. So the year of therapy can bring huge changes for someone who's just needs a breakthrough.
Awesome. So I'm intrigued. Now, folks can go right to your website and they can book. And what does the consultation look like? What does kind of give us the scoop? Like maybe someone kind of give us like the most common types of things you see in terms of conditions, kind of give us a breakdown with that.
Yeah. So typically at a consult, you would have four during the course of a year. And then the remedies follow during the entire 12 to 15 months, essentially. And the consults, we use a little device to kind of help us figure out which particular remedies that the person's going to test for. We can do this through Zoom. And then we just mail out the remedies directly. And then, of course, there's an interview, and I talk to you about, what are your symptoms? What's going on? What are you dealing with? When we talk about what can we really treat with this, we did a study back in about 2010, it was published in the Swiss Holistic Medicine Journal. 11 different medical centers, over 1,000 patients, had the ability to rank their therapy over 15 months. Excellent, good, satisfactory, or not good at all. 86.6% of the patients ranked their therapy as excellent, good, or satisfactory. And that study, they included everyone now I have to make sure, I'm not making claims, right? So we're
Sure.
treating emotional sort of conditions, but they also complained of having anxiety, depression, headaches, infertility, skin issues, autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, a host of different complaints. Because, Jannine, what we have to realize, like the iceberg method, we only see what's happening at the top. A lot of my patients have been to 10 different doctors. They don't know what else to do. They've done the CT scans. They've done the MRIs. They've done all the lab work and the blood work. They've changed their diet. They're still struggling. That means that 80% of the iceberg that sits below is often something they haven't done. And that is usually something associated with the emotional health. And when you change that paradigm, and you can relieve the body of some of the emotional baggage that it's sort of carrying, then the physical body all of a sudden has all this freed up energy and can actually fix what it's struggling with on the physical level.
Right, right. Because I mean, ultimately, like I try to talk with folks a lot, is the symptoms that we experience are the body signs that we are out of balance energetically as much as we are physically, because the physicals are just the energetic, basically output. Let's put it that way. Can you talk to us a little bit about neuroenergetics a little bit? Because I think with let's put it this way, when I talk with folks about homeopathics and we're talking about energetic medicine and the energy of, say, a Bach flower compared to energy of, say, chamomile, or I'm trying to think of all of the different homeopathics I have in my head, rust tox or something like that. I'm thinking for folks that are familiar, apis, that's one that a lot of folks know for bee stings. When we're talking about the energetics and folks take something in, now, with your particular remedies, are they liquid? Are they pill form? And like we're sucking on them like the traditional Boyrin or the Highlands types of tabs?
Yeah, so they're liquid. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And what we do is the dosage is 12 drops twice a day.
Okay.
So we take, and they're all based in a little 20% alcohol base, because that stabilizes the energetics of the whole thing. So people will get up in the morning, they'll take 12 drops of one, 12 drops of the other, and they put in about 6 ounces of water. And then they drink the water twice a day. So that's how these particular ones are taken.
Okay. And in terms of compared to normal homeopathy, are we also avoiding food within a certain amount of time or coffee within a certain amount of time? Is there avoidance and things in terms of that?
Everyone's got some different laws, different rules that they think apply or may not apply. I don't know which ones apply anymore. So I tell people, just 10 minutes before food, 10 minutes after food, just have, a clean palate to take it.
Okay. Okay. Because, yeah, I mean, in school, I was taught like there was some crazy stuff we were taught in naturopath school around homeopathy. And it was like, I don't even know how to prescribe this to people because, one, most of the population drinks coffee. So if they can't drink coffee around when they take a remedy, well, there's that. And then the mint in the toothpaste can interfere. I mean, it got to the point where I was like, I can't do this. It's too hard.
And we've just found with our particular remedies, they are extremely high dilution. So in the world of homeopathy, lower dilutions can make physical changes. The higher dilutions that you get, these work much more in an emotional, mental sort of condition. So we find that anything that you're drinking, eating, typically doesn't have any sort of a relation to the result of the therapy.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. So now a lot of folks that are in my circles and might be listening to this podcast might have heard of NES and the NES systems where there's a scan and there's a voice where you say things in it and it scans your voice and then determines your energetic pattern and then you get your homeopathics with it. Are you familiar with this technology in this company?
Yes, I am. I've not used it personally, but I have seen it among a host of other plethora of these similar type of devices.
So I would love if it's at all possible for you to explain the difference between your company and these and NES and those types of things because I think a lot of folks right now like NES is kind of hot. Folks
Yeah.
talk about it. People ask me about it a lot.
So I don't have anything against these sort of companies or these devices. We know that there's higher laws of physics that are involved that that are creating some of these remedies. We do it the old-fashioned way by hand.
Mhm.
Okay, so we take the raw materials in the facility. We go through the process of dilution and succussion, where we shake them and then we redilute them and then we shake them some more. So these are all handmade homeopathics according to the old way of doing things. So and regulated in a very tight FDA facility. We're very confident that what you're getting is something that's taken some time. It's been laboriously treated and is very effective. When you get some of these other systems, these other devices that create these, we call them imprinted remedies, right? Where we've imprinted some sort of energy. No one really knows how these devices really work. They may tell you, oh, it's doing this or it's doing that. But there's no way to scientifically prove that these devices are creating remedies that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Do I doubt that they are? I couldn't tell you one way or another. I've seen some of them work. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely not against it. But we know from the science of homeopathy that the studies have shown that it can activate basophils and even further some of the quantum, the laboratory imaging that was done with, it was done out of Russia. They can actually pinpoint and see under microscope what they call quantum particles. Once the homeopathic has dried and all the water's evaporated, it leaves visible actual, they call them quantum particles because they didn't have another name for them. So we know that homeopathics do create something that's real. It's not just
Yeah.
science fiction.
Thanks for that explanation. I know I kind of put you on the spot on that one. It's those kind of it's just something that I want folks to kind of get the difference so that they understand what's going on between one medicine versus another because the energetic imprints, like you were saying, those kind of things compared to actual herb that's been diluted to cost all of those different things. I mean, it is very different. Um, and I want to make sure I get that across to everyone. Now, I have another question for you in terms of the muscle testing, the kinesi, I think you called it
Yeah,
kinesi
kinesiology.
testing, because muscle testing for me has been one of the hardest things that I've the different finger ones, the put your arm out kind of one. I've struggled with it myself, and I would love to hear how you guys are doing that and how you're working with folks online with it.
So essentially, what happens is I struggled with that. There's the Amora O-ring test. There's the push down. There's all these different methods. I always found them really pretty difficult for me to kind of grasp until I was introduced to the German way of doing it, and they used what's called an arm length reflex test. And so essentially, I would sit across from, if we were in person, you and I would sit across face to face from each other. I would grab your wrists. Okay. So I'd be holding onto your wrists like this. Most of us have an even arm length. Our thumbs will come up equal. And we found, yeah, give that a shot. We found that if you take certain homeopathic remedies and you begin to place them on the person, and then you retest, if it causes a dysresonance, there's a slight tensing in one of the shoulders, and you'll go from an even arm length, thumb length, to a slightly uneven thumb length. And this kind of clues us in, oh, so this is probably the remedy that we're looking for, or this is the disturbance that we seem to be coming upon. So that method, for me, it worked really, really well because it just happened. It just happened. You could see the change physically in the body. Whereas all these other ones, I'm like, did I pull too hard? I pushed too much. This one, it was like I could just put the remedy on the person and I almost didn't even have to touch them. And I could see, oh, yeah, there's a change for sure, biological change. So that's the method that we use. If we're doing it through Zoom, we use a self-testing. So essentially, I use my own arm length to kind of come up with that sort of a diagnosis in that scenario.
So instead they're not doing this. You're doing it on your end and then putting the remedy on you and seeing how your
That's
energetics
correct.
respond.
That's
Cool.
correct.
Cool.
It's not the ideal circumstance. The ideal circumstance is that you and I are sitting in front of each other, across from each other, and we're doing the testing. But in today's world, not everyone can travel to Boise, Idaho, where I am, right? Or to one of our practitioners that are doing this. So this other work, we found that it works just as well. You miss that sort of human interaction, but it's kind of the world we live in now.
It is. And I mean, honestly, that's what I've started to realize is that when you connect with someone, even through Zoom, you share energetics, right? We're sharing energetics right now. And so I do believe that those things are possible. Now, of course, I'm super curious too in a consult, obviously I do have some practitioners that listen to my podcast. And so we'll get you here in a couple minutes to talk about how they can, link up too with you, because I know a lot of people will want to try working with this in their practice too. For me, I'm very intrigued for mine as well. And so that's why I was asking about the Zoom kind of how do you do these things? Um, where was I going with this? Oh, yeah.
We teach practitioners how to do that, how to do this particular testing.
Okay.
And they'll look at me like that was so easy. And I'm like, yeah, it's that easy. And you will get even better at it the more you practice it. It's a skill. That's all that it is. Just like you went to learn how to put a needle in someone in a certain way, where to go, it was a skill that you learned. This is the same way. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it.
Very cool. Very cool. So say someone wants to just contact you directly, wants to just do a direct consult. And when you work with them, you're taking kind of what's going on, all of their experiences, things of that nature. And then at the end, is this when you do the consult with finding the homeopathic or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
does it
We
work?
will, we kind of do it clear throughout, right? So we'll do kind of a full scan where we look at, what are happening on the physical level. All right. What sort of organ systems may be out of balance? What other sort of issues might be going on? And then we determined, all right, which combination of the Ruby Med products are we going to work on to really work with the subconscious? Plus, I want to hear, what do you think is going on, right? Have you had some trauma? How do you think they might be related to what you're experiencing physically? A lot of this is sometimes just people will be like, wow, I didn't know that. I'll give you a quick example. I was doing a podcast with a therapist here a couple of weeks ago, really great therapist. And she was talking about allergies and how she can't gets around tree nuts and she has all kinds of different allergies that happen. And I asked her, when did that happen? And it happened when I was 10, 11 years old. And I said, what was going on at that time? She goes, that was the time my parents were divorcing. And I remember like one 4 or 5 just eating pistachios. They were just, we ate. So you were not always allergic to tree nuts. No, I wasn't. And I said, and you think right about that time, something changed. And she goes, oh my gosh, I never really put this together. And I said, it's quite likely that the trauma, the event of your parents' divorce, may or may not, of course, we can't pinpoint it exactly, been one of the factors that eventually caused an immunological response manifesting as an allergy, but really driven by the underpinnings of the trauma associated at that time when you were young. And so now you're out there trying to get allergy shots, you're doing NAET, which are all great, but what's might be the possible root cause of this? Could be an old emotional trauma. That if you relieve that, then all of a sudden the physical just says, wow, I feel great. I don't have that same sort of stimulation that I had then. So that's kind of one example.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm like, so okay, what about this? What about that? I could probably hold you hostage for about 4 hours of asking, what about this? What about
And
that? Now, of
I
course,
probably have a story for each one too.
that's so cool. I mean, I probably, I'm gonna ask one because it's one of the ones that I think a lot of people struggle with in terms of skin
Mm.
and women and yeast infections, gut skin. Do you have a story about that? Because I want to mention that one just because, yes, it resonates a little for me, but it also have a lot of females that it seems to show up at certain times in life and comes back.
Well, there can always be number one. I don't want to discount that there can always be, yeah, it's just a physical reaction, right? You
Sure.
always have to look at your environment. You know what kind of chemicals you've been exposed to, you know what sort of toxins may be exposed to. But if you've done all of that, okay, and you're at the point you're like, I got horrible psoriasis and it wasn't always this way, or whatever it might be. I had a one patient one time. She was originally from Haiti, and she was 15, 16 something, and she described being in a scenario where she was walking home from school and some guy grabbed her and he raped her. And several things came about that. Number one, she did begin to get some psoriasis. She got some skin issues that she was always kind of picking at. Um, and of course, she had some depression. She had some anxiety. She also had OCD, washing her hands. This lady was 60 by the way. So this didn't just happen. She'd been dealing with this for 40 years essentially.
Um,
And and when we started talking, she says, Nick, I know that when I came out of that, I felt dirty and I couldn't get clean. And I know that my washing of my hands is me trying to get clean. It's me trying to get clean from that particular event. And of course, she's had some trouble beyond that, but all of this was this related to the skin issue. The skin was related to the rape that she had when she was young. So that's just one little example of how some of these things happen. If you're getting chronic kidney infections, chronic yeast infections, sometimes that's biological, right? Could just be a
sure.
change in environment. But oftentimes I find in those women, there's something going on emotionally between a husband and a wife, or a partner, or something sexually that hasn't been right in the past, will often manifest in those sort of feminine physical sort of symptoms like yeast infections and chronic UTIs and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks for touching on that. Those are things that, a lot of women in my practice do deal with. And I like to think of it because, as an emotional component, because we're not, obviously, guys, my big thing is we're not just our symptoms, right? There's so much more to it than that. And when something becomes chronic and you've been to all the doctors and all the specialists and everyone's like, you're fine, Nick's the guy you want to get in touch with. you know you want to get a hold of some Ruby Med products. So I'm super intrigued, and I'm looking forward to getting more education around the Ruby Med products, and allowing folks in my practice to kind of be exposed to it, and I need to get some training. So practitioner training, let's go into that. How do we go to Privianaturals? Like, is that the website? Like, well, how do we
Yeah.
do this?
So if you're a practitioner and you're thinking, I've got to learn about this, first thing you do is go to the website. You can call our number directly. You can send us you fill out one of our forms. Someone will, probably myself, will get in touch with you. Typically, we have trainings clear throughout the country. We'll find a local hotel. It usually depends on how many interested parties. Like if Right now, we're starting to generate a lot of interest on the East Coast in the New York area. So we'll probably fly out there. We'll train 10, 15 practitioners, show them how to use everything, how to order it, get it to their patients. We go through a lot of the philosophy behind the system, and then how do we prescribe the remedies, how we do the testing, because that's usually the one that people always want to know the most of. And you'll feel very confident by the time you leave. I think I can do this. And then we just let you go.
Awesome.
We
Awesome.
do have three levels of training. So once you get through the first level, that's enough for you to get out and prescribe it. But then after a while, people will be like, "Gosh, I love this method so much," and they'll go to our level 2 training and to our level 3 training.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. All right, folks, I will have that in my podcast notes at drjkrausenD.com. So, Nick, of course, the big question from the beginning of the podcast, how's your son? What's going on?
My son is he's a great kid. So he's been all over the world. He's been to Ukraine for stem cells about a decade ago. He's been to India for very specialized homeopathics, Mexico lots of times, all the best doctors you're going to find here in the US. He is 18 years old. If you looked at him, you wouldn't know that he even had autism. He can ski down a black diamond. He can ride a skateboard like a pro. He'll run 3 miles with me. He still struggles with his communication. So the input is good, like go dump the trash, go get ready for bed, brush your teeth, and go. He's on it. But the ability to have a conversation is still a little bit of a struggle for him. But he's happy. He's wonderful, best kid ever.
Sounds like a great outcome. I'm happy to hear that because I know so many parents will hear, after certain things that happen with vaccines, they'll be crushed, right? And have
Oh,
no hope. And so I wanted you to end off the podcast on that so that folks could hear that there is hope and it's definitely a better outcome than what the doc was saying at first.
it's a struggle, no doubt. And there's lots of parents now that are experiencing these sort of troubles in their kids. Don't give up. Don't give up because there's a way out. Your child may or may not completely recover. But the one thing I go to bed knowing is that I did everything that I could. I spent a lot of money, spent everything I had. I spent a lot of money on things that didn't work, Jannine, and that's okay because I knew the more that we tried, eventually things were going to work. And at the end of the day, when I'm 80, I'm not going to sit back and say, you know what? I wish I had bought a bigger house. I wish I had worked more hours, right? But I know that I'll be able to say, hey, I did everything for my kid during those really crucial years so that he could have the best life possible.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that is, you know, what the takeaway that I want folks to hear. And a lot of folks are going to resonate, whether they have kids that they're trying to find a solution for, whether they're looking for their own mental health, emotional, etc. solutions. Sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to getting some training. And gosh, you're doing great things with Ruby Med. So let's recap for folks where they can find you, the website and Instagram, social media stuff. If you're on it anywhere, they can find you there.
Yeah, so you can find us Instagram at Privianaturals, Privia naturals.com. We only launched 3 months ago, so we're still in the very beginning stages. Of course, the best place is the website, www.privia, Privia, naturals with an S.com. You can get, there's a lot of articles there. Our 1,000-person study is there. Some of our books are there. So there's a lot of information if someone can digest, if they want to really dig into this and learn how to use it as a practitioner or what they want to do as a patient, how they can, go to the next level, for example, or fix that long-term chronic illness that's really got emotional roots.
Yep. Perfect. It's perfect. And I think I see it as a great adjunct or a side to a regular kind of functional medicine. As you are working on some of the symptoms, taking care of that, then you're working on the mental, emotional, spiritual side. It works well together. And I'm sure you see a
Exactly.
lot of folks that do them both together all the time.
Absolutely.
Ah, thanks, Nick. So I appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to getting myself trained up and get you back on the podcast once I'm trained up a little bit.
Let's do it. Sounds like fun.
Deal. Hey, Health Junkies, are you feeling just off? Feeling like you're aging a little bit faster than you want to and wondering what in the world is up? Hey, I might have some answers for you and some direction. If you want to chat with me, I am offering complimentary calls right now. You can head over to Dr. spelled out JKRAUSEND.com. Take my quiz, click on the schedule a chat, and let's talk and see if we can get you in the right direction. And if I'm able to help you, I'm going to let you know. Otherwise, I'm going to help you find what you're looking for. Head over to drjkrausend.com and check it out now. Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.